Later on, I guess you realized, what a creative force she was.
An incredibly creative force, yeah. And everybody who knew Catherine, who was interviewed in the film, felt that she was their best friend. It was more than just that story. I thought that there was a shape here. Catherine's life started to take shape.
For so many of us who grew up captivated by the strange, haunting world of Twin Peaks, the Log Lady was a mystery, a messenger, and somehow comforting. But what we didn't always know was that the actress Catherine Coulson, who played her, was so much more than her role. She was a beloved collaborator of David Lynch, one of the earliest female camera assistants in Hollywood, and someone whose quiet presence left a deep mark on everyone she worked with. A new documentary titled I Know Catherine, the Log Lady is more than a portrait of a beloved character. It's a revealing and heartfelt exploration of the woman behind the legend through rare archival footage, intimate interviews, and stories from those who knew her best. This film traces Coulson's singular journey from sets of avant-garde student films to her prolific career as a stage actress to the heart of one of television's most enigmatic creations. At once a celebration and an act of remembrance, this documentary captures the spirit of a true original, someone who, like her famous counterpart, saw things most of us couldn't, and never stopped quietly guiding us towards something deeper, stranger, and more profound. Join us with director Richard Green as we sit down with him to discuss his film, I Know Catherine, the Log Lady, on Inside the Art House, starting now.
Hi, my name is Greg Lumley.
And I'm Raphael Sparks.
And welcome to this episode of Inside the Art House. So the cinema world lost one of its true geniuses earlier this year. David Lynch passed away in January. And a key collaborator in David's first film, Eraserhead, was Catherine Coulson. And today we're here with Richard Green to talk about his documentary, I Know Catherine, the Log Lady. Thank you for joining us, Richard.
Thank you for having me.
Great to have you.
Likewise.
So tell us a little bit, how did Katherine and David get connected?
Jack Nance, who played Eraserhead, was Catherine Coulson's first husband. They were together. They met up in San Francisco during late 60s, early 70s, theater company called Circus, which was run by a guy named David Lindemann. He went into the first year of AFI. He was one of the fellows, along with David Lynch. And David tells a story in our film about Lindemann knowing actors, and David asked him, and he recommended Jack Nance. Jack Nance brought Catherine. David and Jack didn't have a good interaction until they got outside and saw David's roof rack on his Volkswagen. And then all of a sudden it got really, really close. So Catherine was there. She was promised a role and she was hanging out, and somehow or other, I don't know this story, I never got it, Catherine got a job working for Jean Furstenberg, I think was her name, or Von Furstenberg, I'm not sure.
No, Jean.
Yeah.
Head of the AFI.
Head of the AFI. Catherine became her assistant, which meant that Catherine basically took over the AFI. That was it. Right? When she started shooting for all the fellows, because she became a DP and a first AC, right, through Fred Elms on our picture and on Eraserhead, she brought in Donna Dubain to be her assistant. So basically, the reason David Lynch was able to spend 6 years of a 2-year fellowship at AFI living on that piece of beautiful property at the top of Beverly Hills was because of Catherine.
Wow.
How did you encounter Catherine? And then from there, I guess I want to know, what was the aha moment about making this film?
I moved to San Francisco. I was living in LA. I'm a New Yorker, but had grown up here in Arizona, and moved to San Francisco at 18. Just by accident, I discovered that I could make money doing improvised verse in the streets. Came through the Dickens Fair. And I was really good at it with an English accent, wonderful show, big challenge to the audience, and I could pull this off. I could, they weren't beautiful poems. They were doggerel, as Variety described it at the Mayfair. But it was that tightrope walking, improvising. Am I going to get to the next rhyme? Will I get there in time? And if I don't, it's okay if I add a couple of extra syllables, as long as I'm cute and charming and I can take a bow at the end of the day. So I go up there, I'm doing that, and I meet John Acorn and Cab Covey and Donna Dubane, who have they're involved with a medicine show, an improvised medicine show at this failing fair outside of San Francisco. But John invites me up to Humboldt County for this workshop in Commedia dell'arte with Carlo Mazzone Clemente, which led to the Del Arte troupe, which is celebrating 50 years this year. The school, actually, I was in and out before the school formed, but it's up there still in Blue Lake. And we started a theater company, and it was very successful. Immediately, everybody who had been in circus was now in our theater company. So half the people in Eraserhead did shows with us, Theater of Marvels, up in San Francisco.
Katherine was radiant to meet her. There was something remarkable about her. But your decision to then make this movie about her, I guess I just wondered what that was.
So when Jack Nance died, which was an unsolved homicide, we were just about to make my first feature, which is 7 Year Zigzag. It's a narrated rhyme over original swing music. We had hired a 23-year-old intern, kid named Chris Levins. And he walked in one day as I was talking along with Donna Dubane to Catherine, because we were going to, I don't remember why we were talking to Catherine, but he heard that we were talking to Catherine. And he went, Catherine Coulson, Jack Nance's wife, Eraserhead's wife. This kid had just graduated from Penn State and was the massive Eraserhead fan. And I said, yeah, this is Catherine, right? And I told him a little of the story. And the next morning over coffee, the kid comes in and says, that'd make a really great documentary. And I go, The night when Jack Nance died, there was a memorial in Pasadena. We all went, right? I hadn't seen David Lynch in 20 years. That's the reason I'm in Mulholland Drive. He asked me, he said, Richard, remind me how you know all these people, right? I remember you, Richard, but remind me. So I told him the story of being this evil magician at this fair. They paid me for my improvised verse act, and they would pay me for another act. So I had built a 15-foot gallows, or designed it when I was a kid. They paid for me to build the gallows and perform this evil magician where I would hang myself. It was great, right? But David, who likes building things, right? All of a sudden, the gallows fascinated him, the evil magician. Back in the day, when I was at the Mayfair Music Hall, I had a drinks budget. I don't remember what it was, $25 or something like that. I could drink every night, $25 worth, and I don't drink. But Jack drank a lot, and David liked a drink once in a while. So I can't tell you how many times over that 6 or 12 weeks they came, but it was pretty regular, because I didn't have a car. And I think Jack had one, or David had a car. He had the Volkswagen. So they would drive me down sometimes, but I don't know how many times. But that became our relationship. So years later, at the memorial for Jack, that's when David sort of put together swing music, right? Because I gave him a book on tape of this swing musical I was going to shoot, that we had a book on tape version, and Evil Magician, and the same exact environment in Mulholland Drive as is at the Mayfair Music Hall. Big maroon curtain and a box up on the side in Mulholland Drive. It's a blue-haired lady, and in the original Mayfair, it was Bernard Fox, the chairman of the Mayfair Music Hall. So he came in, we decided to do this documentary. He said, what about a documentary? I thought, everybody came to our house right after Jackson Memorial, just get everybody here. We shoot it in an evening, right? Didn't happen that way. But so a 23-year-old kid who'd never shot anything got to direct this movie, because I was shooting something else and I wanted to keep my hands off. This was in 2015.
What was the name of the film, though?
The name of the film is David Lynch Presents I Don't Know Jack, documentary about the unsolved life and homicide of Eraserhead star Jack Nance, because he was an unsolved homicide.
I just want people to be able to find it.
I appreciate that. It's shown at one of the Laemmle theaters, actually.
Yes, it did.
When Catherine died in 2015, I got a call that evening from Donna Dubane. Everybody up at her house in Ashland, where they shot those last scenes, had to sign a $6 million penalty NDA. If you tell anybody about it, you pay $6 million. This is everybody, your family, friends, the camera people, everybody signed that NDA. And yet Donna, who was so close to Catherine, and somebody else who was so close to Catherine, called Donna and said, this is what happened. Donna called me and said, Catherine passed. She shot her last scenes 3 days, she said 2 or 3 days ago, it was 4 days, at her living room, and I can't tell you any more about it. They won't tell me more about it. Donna should have been up there and couldn't get there. So I just went, an actress is dying of a disease and playing the character who's dying of the disease and then dies that's a story. That's pretty interesting. And I already knew how interesting David was as a person. And I just thought Twin Peaks was coming out season 3, and I thought, this is a backstory to that. Netflix is going to give me $5 million to make this movie tomorrow. All I have to do is tell them about it. And it didn't happen. I'm not connected enough to get to the people who could have funded this. And it took me about 8 months I immediately did an interview with David. We did that. And once we got the interview with David, I was convinced it was more than just that story. I thought that there was a shape here. Catherine's life started to take shape. Everybody who knew Catherine, who was interviewed in the film, felt that she was their best friend. That was not my experience. I knew Catherine. Maybe it was that fact that Jack was one of the funniest people you ever met, and David was an oddball. The three of us were hanging out in the living room while Catherine was making tuna fish sandwiches. So I didn't get to know her that well, which ultimately it allowed me to feel like I could do the movie, right? That I'm not going to be blinded by this deep personal relationship. I can sit back and see the forest for the trees. So that became a metaphor for the film as well, log lady trees, and just this idea that there's a bigger picture, that nobody really had that whole perspective of who she was, because she was an extraordinary person in so many areas.
I mean, she was doing a lot more than making tuna fish sandwiches.
Yes.
At the time, that may have been your perception.
That was my perception. But yes.
Later on, I guess you realized, what a creative force she was.
An incredibly creative force, yeah. And, she grew up in Disneyland, right? Her father was the head of PR when they started Disneyland, right? And she played characters on the street with people. And for me, that and the fact that the family ran the Aunt Jemima Pancake House. And there's a photograph of Catherine in the center, a group of young, handsome, white kids on either side of her, with her mother on one end and her father on the other end, and Aunt Jemima. And Catherine it was all of her friends that ran this place. And their whole attitude was they invented the happy face pancakes. It was all, you come here, you're in Disneyland, this is to have a good time. And the interaction with people as a character, which is, for me, I had that experience in the Renaissance fairs and in the Dickens fairs, environmental theater that we did with Benedetti at Cal Arts, where you're interacting. You're playing a character. You've got an audience that wants to participate, that wants to be in that world. And you give them that, you embrace that, you give them that room, especially for kids, seeing Snow White, and being Catherine. I think it informed her entire way of dealing with everything in her life, but in particular the sets, and, brought the theater mentality where we're all dependent upon each other. You can't start a show if the spotlight follower isn't there. You just can't start the show. Right? We become dependent. It also, gender-wise, there's a lot, after we finally let women on the stage after the Elizabethan period, you're on stage with a female. It doesn't make any difference what your gender politics are. Those are you're equal. There is an equality. And I think, I believe, and I don't have any evidence of this, but I believe it, that Catherine brought that to Eraserhead. That over this 6-year period of making this movie, it was Catherine's theater background and her Disney background, the interaction with people who gave David his sense of how to deal with people on the set, because David is just famously known as an actor, the best audience you ever had in your life.
And we have a clip, I guess.
Yeah, with David talking about this.
So let's take a
Please.
listen.
Yeah.
Here's a clip from I Know Catherine, the log lady.
Catherine was my number one right-hand man. With me, solid. The one that was really helping the most on Eraserhead.
To facilitate people's lives. She really had a huge need to do that. So often you hear in a relationship that the man is the talented one and the woman could have been creative too, but just ended up being the woman behind the man. Catherine wasn't like that. She was always moving her own dream ahead too. She didn't sacrifice her own creative spirit.
During the time of making Eraserhead, he got this idea for this girl with a log.
It was an absurd, stupid sort of idea, but it was still fun to think about it.
I'll test my log with
every branch of knowledge is the name of this fake, TV show. And Catherine would be the lead, and she'd have a log.
I'm curious about this sort of interaction between theater and film. At least in this period. And I don't know, we can discuss whether, it exists today or doesn't. But in terms of just being able to, work, how does that play into her life, especially Catherine's life, I guess, perhaps?
Yeah. It's an interesting question. There's so many similarities. It's so many of the same people, right? Actors move back and forth between the theater and film, or commercials and radio, or voiceovers, and now we have video games that we voice. There's so many different things. The big difference for me in film and theater is we present in theater. It's all there. It's on the stage, or it's in the round in front of you. You choose what you're going to look at, who you're going to pay attention to, which character most touches you. If there's things going on, and so you choose your own focus. That's true to some extent. The lighting, the performance, the way the audio, if there's music, can impact where you're looking in a stage production as well. The big difference is that when we move, and I think that it used to be much more eclectic. I think that, at Shakespeare's time, somebody may have been the manager of the company, but if the lead actress said, no, I want to come in from over there, people listened. You worked it out. You had to cooperate with each other. There wasn't a central figure that I'm aware of prior to the advent of film. When you had someone saying, okay, now we're going to look over here. It doesn't make any difference what the bad guy's doing over there. We're looking at the good guys in a close-up, or we're watching him draw his gun, or whatever the scene is. You have somebody who is interpreting what's going on in the world of theater, because the theater creates a world. Everybody's still breathing on that stage. In a film, you don't know that if you're not watching that person.
If the director doesn't tell you to,
yeah, exactly. You're being led, and in the theater, you lead yourself. So it is a different kind of experience. In live theater, it's this moment in time. That's it. You can't capture it. Even if you videotape it, you don't get the same experience as being in that room. With film, it's a different kind of experience. But as an actor, as a director, you're still looking for the same connection, I think, to the audience, at least in independent film. I don't make big action movies.
Yeah, I mean, you obviously made this based upon both your passion for the subject, your knowing all the people involved, and you kind of started it. You didn't have to get Netflix to sort of approve it. You decided you wanted to do it on your own. You're an independent filmmaker. Yeah. What has been the process for you in terms of both raising the money and making it possible, and or now kind of rolling it out without a big distributor?
You're big daddy with deep pockets.
Right.
Yes.
You're the studio.
I'm the studio.
Are the studio. You're the engine. So I guess, what's that been like for you?
I would have loved 30, 40 years ago for somebody to come along and give me a big budget to make one of my low-budget movies. So few of us as directors get final cut, get to make the choices of what we really want to see on the screen, get to make the movies the way we want. David Lynch is a perfect example. He only made one studio picture, and that was Dune, and it was recut, and it was a failure at the box office, embarrassed him, but changed him. He never wanted to do another studio picture, and he retained his rights. I think he did very well. I don't know much about his finances or anything, but it seemed like he lived a very healthy and happy and wealthy life, and probably made most of his money on commercials and stuff, because the films were expensive and didn't make that much money, right? There's not that wide of an audience. 2.5 million people is what was estimated the average viewer for Twin Peaks: The Return. So you had 2.5 million people. That's a lot of people, but not in terms of the old numbers when you'd have 30 million people watch a TV show on a Thursday night, right?
Right. Right. So for the uninitiated who don't understand, what is the connection between, I mean, not to be too obvious, but what's Catherine's connection to Twin Peaks?
So Catherine was the log.
There are some people who might watch this who don't know.
Our whole marketing strategy is based on most of the Twin Peaks fans have hundreds, if not thousands of friends who don't understand what the hell they see in Twin Peaks.
Right.
And this movie was not designed for Twin Peaks fans. This movie was designed for people who don't know anything about Twin Peaks, or Star Wars, or Star Trek, or the theater,
maybe,
or say again,
or Eraserhead,
or Eraserhead. This is a film that's about a woman who experienced all these different worlds, but kept with her this sense of who she was, of how she wanted to operate, this sense of being present, which is a theme that comes around not just with her, but also with David Lynch, and both of their their interest in transcendental meditation, which is a very focusing kind of thing that brings you into the moment that you're living in. So she was the log lady in Twin Peaks. This is a 1990s.
So David references that at the end of the clip, talking about
Yes.
this character. So
This was
that's late 80s,
1990 was the premiere of Twin
right,
Peaks.
but when after finishing Eraserhead, we're in 10 years before the start of Twin Peaks.
More than that, because it was 76 to 90, so almost 15 years, and it wasn't a part of the script. It's not. The Log Lady is not in the original script. The only thing, when David saw this film that we made, and he saw a longer version first, his only change was how I presented the bringing of the Log Lady into this thing. Mark Frost, who is David's collaborative partner on this, great creative guy, really, really interesting man. He told me that they wanted the town eccentric, and so he went to David, and David said, "I've got just the right person." And that's what I put in the initial film. When David saw that, he said, "Bullshit, Richard, that's not what happened." And so I was in Germany when he called me, and I came back and we did a Zoom, and I made just a slight alteration, but because David remembers it differently, as we all do remember different things. David remembers they were set up with the pilot, and it was a last minute idea. He called her up and said, "I want you to come in and just turn the lights up," and she was game to do it. So Mark didn't know she was going to be there, right? And didn't meet her until afterward. This is according to David. These are partners who have different memories of something. But she became, because of this odd role, that she was the person. She walked around with a log and spoke to the log, and the log spoke to her. Whether it really spoke to her, it was in her imagination, we don't get into, and we don't need to know, right? They refer to her as the God, I can't remember the name of it now, but the Oracle of Delphi, right? Just someone who has other kinds of knowledge. And this, Mark Frost is very much into Carl Jung and the Big Red Book, and the idea of other influences on our lives besides the tactile things that we can substantiate, right? That there's more, the word synchronicity is the concept of meaningful coincidences, not empty and no coincidences. So this played into things with Mark, and it played into all these ideas of supernatural, which of course permeated television in some ways, with everything from Lost and, many, many series over the years. I think Twin Peaks was very influential on that level.
But so you say that this movie is not targeted at people that know Twin Peaks,
Yes.
and it's maybe, or maybe even David Lynch. What are you using as your target then? I guess?
So,
it is targeted. I mean, that's a
our marketing is
but
targeted,
it would be nice.
but the film is not targeted, right?
Yes.
Our marketing is targeted at the world of David Lynch and the world of theater.
Yes.
We have a really unique, I'll tell you about it if you want a little later, our unique way of doing that, of getting it out. But the film itself is designed to tell the story of this woman who had 4 very distinct aspects of her life that are separate. One of them is separate. All of them are separate from Twin Peaks except that one. She was on camera 25 years after she toured the world every year with the log, going to Twin Peaks fan festivals, going to, autograph signing places and comms and Comic-Cons and things all over the world, and helping keep this whole Twin Peaks world alive. It's a very interesting world, the world of Twin Peaks. These are not just fans of a TV show that they happen to like it. These are highly intellectual, often software people. One of the reasons that the Twin Peaks Festival ran for 31 years up in North Bend was because you had
2 reasons.
Well, a lot of reasons, but there were a lot of Microsoft engineers that were really into it and kept spending the money on the Twin Peaks Festival, kept it alive for all these years, as did Catherine. So there was on camera, behind the camera, she learned on Eraserhead how to be a first AC and how to be an AC, and shot many things, shot things for CBS. She worked on 60 Minutes crew for a long time. She did 2 films with Fred Elms for John Cassavetes, Killing of a Chinese Bookie and Opening Night. Yep. Significant work there. And was one of the first females ever to pull focus on a major movie. Star Trek Wrath of Khan is a big movie. We have
another clip on that.
We do have another clip about that. So on camera, as Log Lady, behind the camera as a focus puller, on stage, 22 seasons at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival, which is the largest theater company in the country. It has an extraordinary history and extraordinary runs, plus, theaters all over the country, plus early, Disneyland characters and revolutionary characters in San Francisco. And then the fourth part of her life was totally different. She was raised as a Catholic, converted to Judaism, married a rabbi, and became the Rebbitzin in Ashland, Oregon. And in the Jewish religion, the Rebbitzin, the wife of the rabbi, who is just a teacher, right? There's no ordaining of anybody being higher or closer to God. There's just a teacher. His wife is the one who does all the community outreach. So you have this person who's like this towering figure in the community, on stage and behind the pulpit and in the temple. She was an extraordinary person. And the people that came together to help her do what she needed and wanted to do at her end of her life, that is the thrust of the story. For me, this is about living life fully and richly all the way to the end, and understanding that process.
Let's take a look at another clip from I Know Catherine, the Log Lady, talking about Catherine Coulson and her will to live and keep performing.
Yes.
God, she's sick, Casey. Be really gentle with her.
I was actually getting a little angry and saying, how could this man put this woman who's dying in a position as an actor portraying this woman who was dying? So I thought, isn't that insensitive?
I was trying to treat her with kid gloves, but she was so professional in that moment, and she wanted him to be that director and treat her like she was alive and brilliant and in perfect health in that moment.
It was surreal.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing when you think about it. I mean, Twin Peaks, 1990, 91, changing television, this cast of, this creative force, David Lynch, this cast of actors. And 25 years later, the fans insisting not only that the series come back, but come back with the same cast members.
Oh, yeah.
And sadly coinciding with Catherine succumbing to cancer.
Yes. It was just weeks after David announced that they were bringing it back that she found out, and didn't want David to know, didn't want to not do this role. It became essential to her.
Or one thing that pops up to me, so at a time when making a movie was impossible and super expensive, film stock, cameras, all the kind of stuff, was hard to get. Putting a play on was arguably massively less expensive.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We now live in a world where that's perhaps not true.
I think it's upside down.
It's upside down, arguably. And yet to be a creator in a filmed medium, we can say whether it's film, blogs, or YouTube, videos, TikTok or something, we don't have that anymore. Are we going to lose that sense of interaction between theater, which, as you point out, is a very different form and develops different parts of actors' characters, and filmmaking?
It's an interesting notion that the democratization of the ability to make film. You can get a camera, you can shoot it on a phone. There's some good films shot on iPhones now.
Yep.
The quality of the recording.
There's an Academy Award-winning director who made a movie on an iPhone.
There is.
Yeah, no, and there's got to be more, obviously.
There will be. And yet, as you say, theater, getting a space, just having a space to work in theater is expensive and difficult, and those spaces are drying up. In LA,
theater, both live theater and movie theaters, it's real estate.
It is real estate, and it's big real estate.
Yep.
Again, from my experience now over the last few months of traveling to independent theaters around the country and meeting with audiences and having the experience of, it's there's nothing better than a packed house for your movie, right? But I found that sometimes we had 7 people in an audience and it was the same experience, right? The laughs weren't the same, right? Because you need a group of people to sort of feel comfortable to laugh in public, and it ripples through crowds, and that's always wonderful. But the experience for the audience on this film in particular was the same. And my experience afterward of doing a Q&A with that audience and then having them come up and want to sort of touch emotionally was the same. And that's why I believe it was what I set out to do. It's what David wanted as well. David didn't want this to be about Catherine's character in Twin Peaks. And although he understood as a great storyteller how important that final scene and the whole, ticking clock, is she going to live long enough to do it? And how is it going to be done? And can it be done? And will it be used? All those questions, create good drama for the telling of a story. It allowed me to hang all of her past and all these, wonderful feeding elements on that story. He did not want this to be about that scene in Twin Peaks. He wanted it to be about Catherine because he recognized who she was. Right. And you can tell a lot about a man by his friends, right? There's a pithy way of saying that.
Yeah, 100%. Right.
If you look at who's in this movie, right, and there are people that aren't in the movie that are also fascinating that we didn't interview or that we did and they didn't make it in the film because of the cut. But if you look at these people, these are really interesting, fascinating, high-end people. Everybody who knows Lynch's work thought he was wonderful, a genius. Everybody wanted to spend time with him. He was fascinating to hang out with. In this movie, we did an over an hour and a half interview with him, right?
Yeah.
And for me, it was an extraordinary experience because as an actor, and Raphael, you'll understand this better than me, the quality of the attention you get from another player, right, it determines your reality. A king is a king because we bow down. And if we stop bowing down, the king has no clothes, right? And when you're on stage, I experienced this with Eli Wallach one time as just a small part. It was a show called Family Honor, and I had 4 questions to ask him as we were walking down, and I only got 3 of them, and we were almost to where the camera was, and put my hand to slow him down, and he pulled his hand back and he looked at me and he said, "Don't touch me." And I went, oh my God, I've just offended. They're going to call cut. I've just offended Eli Wallach. John Patterson, the director, says cut, and Wallach just goes, "That was wonderful, thank you." And he walks away. But I was freaked the fuck out because he was so there. He was so present in what he was doing. It's like when you're a kid. It's the same thing we do when we're kids. You be the cowboy and you be the sheriff and I'll be the bad guy. If you have to believe it. Otherwise, when I shoot you, you don't die. Come on, man. I shot you first before you got to do that. Right. It's that faith. It's that belief. It's the giving up of all the intellectual and distractions that we have and being present in the moment. And that is the most powerful thing. And you see in these 50, 60 people that are interviewed in this film, they were present. They were present with Catherine. They wanted to talk about this. They felt the same thing that all of them felt of being in that room with her, being in that moment. She looks you in the eye and it's you. She's seeing you. That's the experience I had with David on Mulholland Drive as an actor, presenting that material to him. And the greatest audience I ever had, he got it. He got everything, right? And when I interviewed him for this, it was the same. It was almost like that relationship that we'd had, which was, 10 or 15 years before, 20 years before that we did this together, Mulholland Drive, that relationship was there. So he could just talk to me and I could listen with just nothing else. That's what comes through here.
Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah. I mean, when you think of David, you don't necessarily think of his relationship with actors. And yet, he really did have that. And then also, amazingly brought it to bear in his performance as John Ford in The Fabelmans.
Which was wonderful.
Which was the best part of the film, frankly.
Yes, I agree.
But the film has been playing in theaters. It's played over 50, 60 dates. I guess by the time we get this episode out, unfortunately, it's hopefully we'll still be screening, have some spot screenings in theaters around the country, but it is going to be on VOD.
It is. And I can't tell you the date. We're just about to announce it, but it will be sometime this summer. I know when it is, but I can't really speak it because we don't know.
So it's not going to be on that ta-dum thing, but how can people where will people be able to find the film?
I know Catherine.com or the Log Lady Movie on Instagram.
Okay.
Our website. We are working with, you saw a clip of Annie Lundgren, a dark-haired woman. She's a producer and a software coordinator for a lot of the larger digital companies up north. She lives in Oregon. Her husband, Gary Lundgren, is also in the film. They're wonderful filmmakers. I've seen their films here at Laemmle Theaters, right?
Yeah, sure.
She has developed a platform for filmmakers. They did it for their films, and now they're offering it to other filmmakers. We'll be the first to premiere it. It's based on Shopify. And it's a very simple process. You go to most of the places, YouTube or Vimeo or those places, you have to sign up with them, and then you can use their service. You have to buy their service, then you can. This is just a straight ahead thing. Come to our website, you can see a trailer, you can buy the movie, and we have 2 other films that we'll be selling there as well, or streaming and download, and a couple of albums.
So is that their Joma Films platform?
This
basically?
is on. Well, it'll appear. It is the Joma Films.
Platform, but it's going to have its own sort of URL and everything.
It'll just appear to be iknowkatherine.com.
iknowkatherine.com. Great.
Our website, and it's very, very hearty. It's very stable. It's very filmmaker friendly because she's taking care of all the back end. For us, it's as filmmakers, it's great, and she's a filmmaker. And interestingly enough, I've known them since we shot. 7 years ago, I shot those interviews up in Oregon, and that's where we met. She helped us produce that session when we were there. But we sort of came to this on our own. When COVID hit, they had a couple of independent films that they wanted to get out, and they had relationships with theaters, and they were worried nobody was going to come, and the theaters were thinking about closing. So they went to the theaters, and they said, hey, we'd like to do a partnership with you. Stream it, and you guys will share the money, but we can advertise it through the theater. This was pretty great. Our technique is a little bit different, but it fits in with it. It's basically an affiliate code program. We call it a partner program. We're going to our 1,752 backers and we're saying, hey, we're going to give you all a special code, an individual. Just come tell us where to send your money, because this code, the streamings will be $20 stream or download. The code will give anybody that's on your friends and family list that you mail it to that uses your code a $5 discount. That's 25% off of the price. But additional $5 will come back to you as the partner. So people who backed us on Kickstarter, who put up 50 or 100 or more, may be able to make all that money back
just by getting some other people.
And, by just having their friends and family see the movie that they backed. And it's a movie they back. So I'm calling my friends and family. I'm saying, hey, I backed this movie and it's fucking great. Check it out. I can get you a $5 discount. And,
one day when I'm not so traumatized still by it, we'll do something about the birth of virtual cinema in the immediate aftermath. But the Lundgrens were absolutely terrific, and it was great to work with them.
Yeah,
as we were watching our theaters shut down. Richard, it's been really great to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
So glad you made this movie. Such a wonderful testament to Catherine.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thrilled that it's out there. So if you've missed this movie in theaters, it will be coming to you soon. Please check your Instagram and our website to find out when that is. And if you like today's show, please subscribe, share, so we can continue to get the word out about Richard's wonderful movie and others. Thanks for joining us today on Inside the Art House.
Take care.
Our show was produced by Raphael Sparge with on-site producer Norrin Dickerson. Supervising producers are Thomas Cassetta and Miles McCreary. Our show was edited by Gabriel Emily and sound mixed by Thomas Cassetta. Our musical theme was composed by Isabel Engman and Gerardo Garcia Jr. Marketing by Gabriel Emily. Show graphics by Jenna DeAngelis. Additional marketing and web design by Stephanie Peters. Filmed at the historic Laemmle Royal Theater in Los Angeles, California. See you next time on Inside the Art House. If you like today's show, please consider subscribing to our channel to learn more on Inside the Art House.